Chapter 6, Professor 1. Ellipsis. I spent 2 weeks immersed in trying to understand magic in my own body. As a result, I memorized the magic basic psychokinesis on my whole body. It was like an invisible tattoo of a huge psychokinesis magic circle engraved on my skin. Flow at. There were 3 fountain pens floating like paper airplanes in the spacious living room. My psychokinesis limit was 10 fountain pens. 300 kilograms of pure metal. Considering that the specifications of psychokinesis described in the magic book was the limit of basic psychokinesis is 30 kilograms if it matches well with the magician's own attributes, or if it's just a simple push. This was a tremendous improvement. This isn't enough, considering it took 2 weeks, but it's satisfactory. Of course, only its performance has been amplified, but I was still far from mastering it. Rather, it was more difficult to master, because its performance was superior. Although I was training as efficiently as possible with the help of understanding, I still had trouble writing with a fountain pen. I'd only be satisfied if I were able to draw a picture of Choi Min Won. I'm done with the basics. Quote, I picked up Beginner Control Magic, Volume 1, from the desk. Here, the difference between basic psychokinesis and beginner psychokinesis lay in the number of lines, which were 18 more strokes. Basic psychokinesis was a magic consisting of 20 inches line, strokes and 2 circles, but beginner psychokinesis had 38 inches line, strokes and 3 circles. Of course, I only have to memorize 18 more strokes and not 38, as the basic form is the base for the beginner form and the strokes are extending out from it. However, this time the thickness of the line was creating problems. I'll do it later. Quote, the body needed time to recover, and if I immediately went to the beginner level without mastering basic psychokinesis, I obviously wouldn't be able to control it. Therefore, my next objectives were as follows. Basic Metal Magic Volume 1. Basic Fire Magic Volume 1. Basic Earth Magic Volume 1. Magic books of these 3 properties. Among them, I could only learn magic compatible with the control type. This was an unexpected side effect. Since the control type magic, psychokinesis, had been engraved into my entire body, learning magic that would contrast the control type would put a burden on my body. For example, Summon Spirit was a type that conflicted with control, so it was impossible for me to learn it, but what I could learn was the malleability type greater than support type greater than destruction type, in that order, as it had similar forms to control magic. Well, it didn't really matter anyway. That guy was only talented in control type magic. I guess, this was also a type of choosing and focusing. Knock, knock. Just when I was about to open a book, someone knocked on the door. I retrieved the floating fountain pens and answered. What's the matter? This is Roy. Magician Alan said he came to bring over some lecture materials. It meant that Alan came over. That's right. The first class of the semester would start 10 days later, next Thursday. I shall come out in a minute. Quote, I changed my clothes with psychokinesis. Well, I tried to change them, but my pants always kept floating towards my upper body, so I put it on myself. Going down to the first floor, I saw Alan and my servants putting down large boxes on the floor. Is this for my lecture? Yes. This is the summary for the first semester. I did it like every year. The eyes of Alan, who answered like that, were surrounded by dark circles. Though the reason why I felt sorry for him weren't these dark circles, but rather that bright face he had after completing his work. Good work. Quote, the other professors of the tower had as many as 20 or at least 5 people under them, while I only had Alan. This was entirely Deculane's fault. Okay. Then, I shall go back now. I grabbed Alan's robe while he was about to return. Eek. Quote, it's late. Have dinner before you go. Quote, pardon. No, eat before you go. Quote, I beckoned to my servant. Following that, the servant quickly led Alan to the dining hall. I'm really fine. It's fine, sit down. Quote, even just the appearance of this dining hall seemed to have intimidated Alan into not being able to move from where he stood. Sit down. Quote, okay. Quote, go ahead and eat. Quote, the meal was prepared quickly. This was a feast even to me. Alan was stunned for a moment, but then skillfully picked up the knife and fork. It's already very late, so stay here for the night. Quote, pardon, no, I shall not have you refuse. Quote, oh, okay. 1 in the morning. In the silent study where one could only hear the second hand of the clock ticking, I was preparing for a lecture. Lecture summary. Diculain, Understanding Elemental Attribute Magic. Thanks to Alan's lecture summary, my preparations in itself were going smoothly. However, it took me a staggering amount of 3,500 mana to just understand half of the first lecture, and that was just the start. That meant that I had to spend about 1,000 mana per week for one lecture to proceed smoothly, though, fortunately, what I grasp using understanding isn't easily forgotten. It would be a lot better if I just took out the useless parts. I performed censorship for the first time in my life. Alan only wrote down the essentials and boldly excluded those deemed too basic or useless in his summary. In fact, these unnecessarily fine details were added partly due to Diculain's uselessly serious nature. After writing up the plan for about an hour, I checked the schedule. It's in 9 days now, huh? Quote, it was past midnight, so there were only 9 days left until the start of the semester. Until then, as Professor Diculain, I had to cultivate some magical knowledge. I was a bit nervous because I was a professor before ever being one, but thanks to the personality system, the burden was lightened. I also had the trait, arrogant grace. This trait would make listeners more focused on what I was saying and make it easier for them to understand. Of course, there was also the way of just quitting my professorship. That would be the most comfortable. However, Diculain was always a professor in the game. In other words, being a professor might be the prerequisite for the side quests and main quests. I shouldn't prematurely quit my job when I didn't even have a clue of what's going to happen. This should be enough. Quote, I folded my handwritten syllabus and put it in an envelope. For reference, Diculain's lecture was at full capacity with 150th students. It was popular because the lecture was given by a few senior professors of the Imperial University's Tower. A one-dimensional understanding of such topics tended to be inaccurate after all. A deeper understanding of such phenomena is needed. Magicians of the University Tower are assigned to the lower rank, debutante, as soon as they enter the tower, and only by accumulating enough essential magic credit are they able to promote from debutante to solda, enabling them to choose their career path. In that respect, the magic credits given by Diculain's lecture were just a meager 5 points. Since it was a combination of 3 lectures, it couldn't be unpopular even if the professor is a freaking jerk. Knock, knock. At 3 a.m. This week's Wizard's Journal was delivered. I shall leave it here. The butler knocked on the door and pushed a journal under the door. I brought it in using psychokinesis and read it. Wizard Journal, New Year's Special. It was the most prestigious journal in the world of magic, the Wizard Journal. Looking at the cover, it seemed like the voice of a certain person was ringing in my ear. As players build their reputation, they'll be listed in this journal. Little things like this are what makes this game fun. Woojin, if you start out as a magician, wouldn't you feel proud of your achievements if you read about them in something like this? It was a memory that made me feel nostalgic for some reason. Because of that, I could still remember that I was Kim Woojin. Let's see if that's really possible. Quote, I grinned and opened the journal. Rookie Magician of the Year. First, the Rookie of the Year section stood out to me. This setting was explicitly put in by the company as they were aiming for Game of the Year. Rookie Magician of the Year. Award. Sylvia von Euseppen Iliade Attribute. Origin Main Type, Specialized. Sylvia, who took over the Iliade family at the age of 17, has 3 colors of origin in her heart. Red, blue and green. These three primary colors are also called realization of miracles. By mixing these origin colors together, anything can be achieved. Therefore, Sylvia can create everything as long as her mana is enough. Her reputation of being of natural noble character is by no means a lie. I was aware of that name. A blonde beauty with the trait, woman of great beauty, and successor of the Iliad family, which is equal to the Eucline family. The status of the Euclines is still subtly higher, but that difference will gradually widen due to this character named Sylvia. I turned the pages and looked for something on Diculane. Diculane, Diculane, Diculane. As I was looking around for my name likes this, I found a fairly large section. Senior Professor of the Imperial University, Diculane von Eucline. He stood out in the field of elemental magic from an early age, and, after graduating from the academy, became the youngest senior professor in the history of the Imperial University Tower. However, presently, now that he has reached his mid-30s, he has yet to show any further achievements. He's still immersed in the magic study he declared 3 years ago. Now should be his time to show his worth and new achievements. If I were the original Diculane, I would have immediately contacted the journal's editorial office. What kind of bullshit are these journalists writing? They're right. Quote, however, the Wizard's journal wasn't something money or family prestige could affect. Furthermore, even if some of Diculane's personality traits got transmitted to me, I was still Kim Woo-jin. I was ignorant and rather carefree about magic. I didn't really feel pressured to perform well. I also had no pride in what I do. People tend to become irritated if they covet more than their own means. I just want to survive long enough to get an understanding of this game. It's already 4 o'clock. Quote, when I looked at the clock, I noticed that it was 4 in the morning, so I headed for bed. Like that, I was laying in bed before I opened my eyes again. It was 6 a.m. Quote ellipsis ellipsis quote, the performance of Iron Man was really astonishing, but that wasn't always a good thing. I want to sleep for at least 6 hours. Quote, it was always so early when I woke up. Only the shy first rays of the sun were touching the ground, the glow slowly flowing into the room. This languid scenery was peaceful and sleep-inducing, but I couldn't fall asleep even if I wanted to. My mind was fully awake after all. Sleepiness and tiredness simply melted away after just a few hours of sleep. For me, who was trapped in this game, 22 hours to spend in a day was way too much time. The lecture would start this Thursday, but I already went to the tower on Monday. I intended to use the tower's magic training room for employees. Senior Professor Diculane, permission granted. The training was quite simple. You only had to solve a given stage, like a mini-game, using magic, that's all. Players gain bonus traits when they clear the last stage. Maybe that system will also apply to me as well. Also, the magic used here is treated similarly to the real world, so you might be able to grasp one's magic's aura. It's me. Diculane. Quote, confirmed. Please select the type of magic you want to train in. Closing square bracket. I chose the control type, psychokinesis magic. Several dots appeared mid-air. The dots intertwined and moved intricately. Level 1. Manipulate objects with psychokinesis to pierce the dots. That was easy enough. I lifted the dagger from my inner pocket using my psychokinetic powers. The dagger beautifully swam through the air, piercing the dots. I finished level 1 in about 2 minutes. Level 2 doubled the amount of dots, so it took me 5 minutes. Level 3 didn't conjure dots, but illusory butterflies, 15 minutes. Level 4 conjured a swarm of illusory bees that swarmed around everywhere, 40 minutes. For the next hour I struggled against a swarm of ants at level 5 before I quit. It's hard. Although, it does feel satisfying. Quote, I used up 2,500 mana. Now that I had done this, I should have grasped the aura to some level. Checking magic aura. Diculane von Eucline. Every magician's magic had an aura, or simply put, a personality. For example, violent, provocative, explosive, calm, undulating, manipulative, cunning, subdued, composed, tranquil, etc. This aura usually resembles the magician's character, which seems to be a minor setting, but it was surprisingly important. Why was it similar to aptitude? Violent, provocative and explosive auras tend to strengthen destructive magic, while manipulative and cunning auras amplify the performance of enchantment or support magic. In that sense, my magic aura would be, let's see, graceful aura. Oh, grace. High in meaning, dignity and elegance. Simply put, this means that the use of magic itself is imbued with grace and dignity. It fits really well. Quote, I laughed out in exasperation. In many ways, this was an aura that suited Deculaine very well. If you want to have more videos like this, then like and subscribe to my channel, and have a nice day or evening or night. I will see you soon.